we all have dreams, big and small, that create a life in our minds different than our reality. All the while, we watch others seemingly make it happen. I'm Rachel Denson, a farm girl turned mortgage guru, moonlighting as your self-help cheerleader. Together, we'll pull back the curtain with intentional conversations and discover how you get there. Hi, I'm Rachel Denson. I'm your host, and I've started this podcast now for the third time, which beats my other record from restarting twice on my first solo episode. So I guess we'll just see on my third solo episode if I start 4 times or if I improve a little bit. So in case anybody wanted to know, yes, it is still the hardest to record and talk to myself. I had a friend tell me, I can't believe you could talk just to yourself for 54 minutes. I was like, yeah, and it flew by. It was so easy. So hopefully I'll get rolling and I'll feel a little bit better. For anybody who loves context, it is February 19th. It is 7:08 p.m. I am getting this episode recorded just in the nick of time for us to stay on schedule. It has been such a joy creating How You Get There. I love the feedback. I look forward to hearing what people think and seeing how each episode performs each week. It's going so good. It's almost nerve-wracking, especially to be here by myself, because it just every episode I've heard such good things, and I've been pleased with the listener average that I've been looking at. And so I feel like I have, like, my guests have given me such a high bar versus when I recorded for the first time by myself and How You Get There was just a thing in my mind. So we're here together. I'm going to go over some of the things that I feel like are my How You Get There milestones. A couple things, I guess, that I want to talk a little high level, a little more recent before I dig into that, though. So first thing is, today is just a prime example of I've had that kind of day where nothing really went as planned. And I just have to remember I can't always be in pursuit of perfection and miss out on the accomplishments throughout the day. I made a trip to Paducah. I left some stuff that I'd planned on giving out to some realtor friends while I was there. So I didn't get to do that at all. I ended up working on my laptop and made the most of my time and got some clients taken care of. So it all worked out. But I ended up being in Paducah longer because after I got sitting down and working on some stuff, I just was glued for a couple hours. And then I had some errands I needed to run, because for anybody who's listening away, I like to say when I feel like a little country mouse when I go to Paducah, which is 45 minutes away from Murray, because I just feel like they have so much more stuff. And sometimes it makes me feel like maybe I would enjoy living in a place with more things, but also then I think back to, I think, what I said on an episode before of I'm quite easy to please. The bar is really low for something sometimes to bring me joy. And so because I don't get to normally run a few errands to some shops we don't have, it was a positive, glass kind of half full moment for my day when, like I said, I didn't get to do exactly what I had planned because I did not bring it. And that is a whole nother story we're going to get into towards the end of the episode. But the other thing I was sitting down is I was driving home, and I knew I needed to record this podcast this afternoon, and I was fixed for my day because I have been sticking to my resolution to get ready every single day. And so I, was totally ready. Like I said, I actually planned on seeing some people today. I was out and about all day. So I was actually really ready, had my hair fixed, cute earrings. Oh, still got my cute earrings in, and I was ready, and I was driving home, and I thought, okay, I could sit down and just get this podcast done. I look like I should look if I'm going to be on YouTube on my podcast. And then I thought, you know what? It's pretty warm. It is finally where there's still light in the sky at 5:45. I have not been running near as much as I would like to be running because just of constraints. And I thought, you know what? No, today is not going to be a day where I pick something else over running. And you know what? I don't have to pick. I know Michaela Thomas and I talked about this, but I am a lady of many hobbies, things I enjoy, obligations. I know Chad laughs at me about that all the time, but I'm a multifaceted lady. And so I was like, no, I'm going to do both. I can do both and I'm going to figure it out. So I like rushed inside. I mean, changed my clothes as fast as I could and just set out and started going. And I ended up being on the phone with a friend, catching up a little bit. And I thought, I'm not even going to wait until we wrap up. Like, I'm literally just going to start running. And I ended up so I got in a phone call with my friend. I got in my jog. And then I came down to my home office and I've sat down and I'm recording a podcast. So if you're watching me on YouTube, it's obvious I am like probably in my running gear. I got my high pony is popping. High pony doesn't make me feel as like lack of hair. So that's what I'm going to go with. But this is a great reminder of sometimes you just have to squeeze stuff in, especially if you resonate with me and there's a lot of stuff you enjoy doing. You've just got to think, I know Chad tells me this all the time. It's not, I can't, it's how can I? And so how can I is I'm going to record right after I get done with my little run. And it's going to be great because I've got chili in the fridge. I've got cornbread cooked. So I don't even have to make dinner tonight because we're doing leftovers. So, okay. On that same note, since I started How You Get There, I really wanted to talk about some of what I had been calling my How You Get There milestones, my personal milestones, flagship moments that I feel like are big notes and chapters in my journey of how I've gotten who I am today, how I've gotten here, which from the outside looking in, if you compared the way I look today and, what my life looks like from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's not all that different. I look just about the same. I've got I had a bob for until I was like 23 or so, really short hair. So, so that's a little bit different. I don't rock the bob anymore. But then also on both of those, I live in the same town I grew up in. I am, from 5 years ago, I'm in the same relationship. From the outside looking in, my life, if you saw my life on paper, maybe things don't look that same, like that differently. But they are so drastically different in my mind, in my spirit, how I speak to myself, how I've been able to define what I'm after. So much of that has changed. I feel so different. And so, and I don't think that's probably something that I feel like that's very probably relatable. I think that's one thing that I don't hear a lot of other people talk about a lot. I don't think it's probably because it's not true, but it's not like casual dinner conversation. And if you're a listener to How You Get There, we don't do a lot of casual dinner conversation on How You Get There. I just looked at my microphone like it had eyes, so that's that's where I'm at. I wanted to go into these milestones really when I had my episode with Chad. That was when we did our 56-minute silent film. I was asking him, hey, do you want to talk about these with me? Because I think they're really important. And I think it would be cool if we talked about them together because you were there or whatever. And then as you all know, if you've listened to the Chad's birthday episode, there was very little time for Rachel. It was all about Chad. And I told him afterwards, I was like, I don't think I said this, but I should have told you, this may be your birthday, but this is my podcast. So anyways, the way you redeem yourself on your own podcast is you just record a whole solo episode with exactly what you want to talk about. In my mind, I thought this was going to be an episode that I would record with somebody, but ultimately I'm going to walk through it myself. And I think sometimes what I'm learning through this is there are conversations that I have had to think, do I really want to talk about them with somebody because I really want to talk about them with somebody? Or am I pushing myself out of my comfort zone and I want external affirmation, an external buffer to get me through what I really want to say. And I think that with this, it's definitely the latter, because anybody I talked with, especially if it wasn't Chad, would really not, I mean, they would maybe have some to contribute here and there because they probably have a few that I identify with, but maybe not. I mean, not all of them, I would think. Sometimes they would just be like, yeah. And I think I'm somebody that really needs that sometimes. And like I mentioned before about sometimes it's okay to need that, but also I think that this is I don't want to hold back what I think and what I know. I don't even think what I know, but what I know are like the building blocks of what I want to share that I think other people could use and benefit from. I cannot wait to share those until I feel like safe with the right person to talk about them. I like this is exactly what I can sit down and talk to you about. So, as you know from some of what I've shared otherwise, I didn't, and I think many people, and I was going through adolescence too, and it's funny to think about. I know I felt so adult at 18, so especially even more so at 21 or 22. But oh, little Rachel, she just had no idea what was ahead. And I'm sure nobody does. I didn't start I'd never given a lot of consideration into what I wanted, what I just enjoyed to enjoy, what I was passionate about when it came. I hadn't given a lot of thought about my health, so I couldn't be passionate about it because I hadn't really given it a lot of thought. My desires, my realm was really quite small. What I did for fun was totally seasonal in like what my college activities were. What I cared about my health was like only being as skinny as I could be. And that my existence, there wasn't a lot to my existence beyond that. And when you have that stripped away, for me it was a total blessing in disguise, because it really started for the first time in my life. I thought, I have all this free time, what am I going to do with it? I don't have a sorority event to go to, I don't have a test, I don't have a club. What do I do now? And so the first thing of what I did because I wrote these out in chronological order to kind of go through them. So it's in no way, shape, or form categorized by, or we're not going through them by importance. We're going through them just as they really happened in my life. And although, I can look back and say, man, I wish I would have done this sooner because this would have solved all this, and this, I have the peace in knowing that, the Lord's writing my story, and it's written. And so now it's just my job to tell it, and, with the hope of positively impacting others. The first big change for me was with running. So I had ran for probably all 4 years of college to the extent of 2 miles at a time. I would run. There's what's called the Loop in Murray, and it's about a 2-mile loop around our main streets. Goes through like part of campus. So I would go there. I would run my 2 miles, check my box, and move on. And would think that somehow miraculously, just because I did that like once a week, twice a week, it would get easier somehow. I would just like run as hard as I could, like it would, and then just be done. So I liked running because I kept doing it, but I didn't know even, I think, where to hardly start beyond that point. But my cousin, Courtney, shout out to Courtney, she lives in Cincinnati, and she started going to Orange Theory Fitness and loved it. And so we talked about it. My aunt went, she loved it. And they were just like, you've got to try this. If there's one in Bloomington, Illinois, which is where I was moving to after college, like, you've got to go. So, I mean, it was probably truly maybe like the second full day I was in town that I went to Orange Theory. And it just totally changed my life. Like, I learned to love running in a way that I didn't realize was there. The runs are 30-minute runs. So from really going like roughly running for about 20 to 25 minutes to 30, it wasn't that it was that much longer, but what was different was it's a guided run. So they're telling you, okay, get on bump to 2% incline and you want to be at, this kind of level of difficulty. And so instead of literally starting and like running as hard as I could to get around a loop as fast as I could and be done, I learned not only the pleasure I find in doing something that's harder than I thought I could accomplish, and then slowing down and enjoying the win before I go at it again. I also learned, there's a kinder way to be to your body while you run. Running is not just getting out there and running as hard as you can for as long as you can and hating every minute of it and moving on. And through these changes in my pace and slowing down and starting and having some reference about like listening to my body about what it could do, I saw myself getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And then I would go to the 90-minute classes on the weekend and I would start running 45 minutes. And so it was really at Orange Theory that I turned running from something I did just in hopes I feel like to lose weight. Truly, the harsh reality of it was to something that I just adored. And there was so much freedom and being able to go and get on a treadmill and run, which there's just the mental clarity and stress relief I get from running. It's like, it's one of those, if you know, and I get that it's not for everybody. And for my non-runners out there, I promise I'm almost done with talking about this, but also to listen to somebody else tell me what to do, for it to not be this mental fatigue of like, keep going, push harder, just keep running as hard as you can. Like, no, it was not only was it less mental work to even not have to do that, but it was also, I was getting to change and not even have to decide that either. So in summary, I would suggest find some way that if you think you want to dabble in running, find a way to try guided run. There are a lot of companies that do this, like Orange Theory Fitness. I now love my Peloton app. They have a variety of instructors that do all kinds of guided runs in way more detail. And still to this day, one of the things that is a tried and true mood booster, mindset changer, always get off the tread feeling refreshed and like glad I did it, the exercise, is a guided run. Because once again, I can get on and they're tell me what I need to do. All I have to do is go. So I'm loving running. I come home to Murray and I end up figuring out I'm diagnosed with this autoimmune disorder. I had been hearing about the Whole30 for a couple years, and I can't tell you exactly how I heard about it for the first time, but I knew it existed. And so I started thinking about, okay, maybe I need to look this thing up and see what it would do and see if any of my symptoms are relieved, because I started really getting interested into the thought about, learning to kind of to that food is medicine. So I was dabbling already. But then after I read the Whole30 book, and not even doing the Whole30, as much as reading the Whole30 book changed my life. And it was the first step in my journey of food freedom. And I think food freedom is talked about a lot more. That's one of those interesting things I love that I hear that so much more from people. Like you hear it, and back to my girl, Michaela, Michaela Thomas talks about that and have it like talking about the relationship with food, not just about, weight loss or results, whatever, but it was like so many light bulbs went off in my head for the first time. And that is one of those things that, like I had mentioned to Macy, reading the Whole30 book, it's a hill I will die on. And it is one of those things that there are not enough cliff notes, not enough videos, not enough summary blogs in the whole world to do that work for you. And if you are listening to this and can't answer the question, do I have a healthy relationship with food? It's worth the read, even if you don't decide to do the whole 30. Truly. I mean, because that's part of the book, is that it talks about figuring out, am I ready to commit to this, and all this stuff behind it. And, Melissa Urban, she's written other books about food freedom. It starts with food. There's food freedom forever. And what's even cooler about the timing of this is actually, as I'm recording this, just like I think it was last week, she recorded that she is re-releasing the updated version of the Whole 30 in a new Whole 30 book. So it's got updated language. It's got some, they have, since the Whole 30 has came out, they have made the plant-based Whole 30. So it's more inclusive to other diets. So if you haven't, go ahead and put it on your calendar for August when the new book comes out. This spiel made me think about, I want this podcast to be, in some ways, a little way that I can tell people Cliff Notes versions of things that I love, and hopefully that it will inspire you to go and seek other things. I think Joel even said that on our episode, is I'm wanting to create a community of seekers. Like, I'm a seeker, because all of these things I have done, I have found out truly from word of mouth from somebody. And I got a taste of it somewhere to think, okay, this kind of sounds like me. Now I'm going to go and find out for myself. And the Whole 30 was just that. I had read like multiple blogs about it, was like only reading about the rules. I even remember I was dating Chad, and it was before I had left to go to Bloomington. And I was reading the rules on the Whole 30. And at the time, it just felt so overwhelming. I'm like, I don't even think I can commit to this. But I borrowed the book from a friend, and the rest is history. And it changed my life, changed my relationship with food, changed my relationship with myself, made me realize so many things that were so linked to some of my health habits and relationship with food. And it's a ongoing journey. The work is never done. But like I said, it was I'm blind and now I see kind of moment. The third thing, which came to me from the Whole 30, is the 4 tendencies framework, and Gretchen Rubin. If you are a listener at all, that's not the first time you've heard her name. She was on a podcast with Melissa Urban, and this is during COVID times, like it's the beginning of 2020, total lockdown. And so I've got a lot of time, I feel like walking, working at home, all the things, like listening to podcasts. And I heard about her 4 tendencies framework. And this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but I do think that this, with accumulated with some other things, is probably true. But I like to say the 4 tendencies saved my marriage before it started, because her 4 tendencies, the framework about, are you an upholder, obliger, rebel, or questioner, made me realize for the first time why I am the way I am, and why Chad is the way he is, specifically Chad, but other people too. I understood myself so much better for the first time, and it made sense to me of like, okay, this is why I'm this way. And personally, Gretchen and I share a lot of personality traits. So to see somebody else talking about these things and being so structured, thriving in structure, having these same mindsets about rules, and like not doing better with rules and different programs than other people, and not understanding why people can't just stick with stuff. All of that started to come, and it started to click in my mind. And especially with the rebel tendency, which they don't do they struggle with internal and external accountability. It really was a turning point of it made me realize Chad does not have a personal vendetta against me when he doesn't put his clothes in the laundry hamper. He lives his whole life this way. It still is hard for me to wrap my mind around. Sometimes, and I admire him for it. Like, he sometimes will say, I don't know if I like, it's a, backhanded compliment, because I will point out, like, I wish I could have the freedom that he has of not truly not feeling obligated to do anything that he does not want to do, because that's truly the rebel tendency, is anything they want to do, they have decided that it's worth doing. And that's just the total opposite of every single way that I'm wired. So it really, like I said, it really alleviated a lot of this like resentment that I thought that he just like didn't get it, or I just like really need to like explain to him why something was a certain way. And then it just, realized, no, like anything that Chad's going to do is going to totally align with Chad's identity. And that is Chad's sole motivating factor. So and I don't think, he was like, now I feel like you're manipulating me. I don't know if I think I'm manipulating you, other than I'm just pointing out, things that align with your identity. And if I have to sell you on it, that's what I'm going to do. But the alternative is much worse. It's a path of like anger, resentment, things about, and it's like he is fundamentally not going to change. So kind of like I said about the cussing, like that's not something I'm going to put energy towards. And the four tendencies helped all of that come to fruition in my mind. And then it also was the book that I did a book club. I started a book club for our Young Professionals of Murray group. And during the book club is when one of the first people that I didn't know well or say anything to said, "You need to start a podcast." And that is a core memory of one of those tick marks and turning points of where was the beginning of me ever thinking that I could do this. And so that's really special too. The next thing, I've talked about it a lot too, but is getting into therapy and talking about a lot of things that I know I had said to somebody, and I don't think it made the edit, but about that I had like through this season 2, I had really learned, and I had realized like Chad said, there's only so much you need to share, even with close friends. But that also doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about it at all. And so for me, I realized that therapy was such a safe space to work through stuff, to share this like spiraling anxiety I had about some things. Like I said, this has been like my life is totally changing. There's so many things that are I can't control, that I feel a total loss of control after that too. Even like when I first got into mortgage, it was such a lifeline for me because I just had so much stress, and it's hard to want to, for me, it was like, do I want to always be emotionally dumping all of this, like, and let that be the only thing I talk with people about? Because I think I'm somebody that I wear my emotions on my sleeve and on my face. And it is, if you know me personally, you know firsthand that, you can tell what's going on up in here very easily. And so it's like without out of concern, people are saying, "Oh, what's wrong?" Whatever. And it's like, well, I like, this doesn't need to be everything we talk about. So for me, it was a good place to be able to work through that, but also feel like when I was in my social sphere, I wasn't giving that all my energy. And it was life-changing. And, also like realizing that the power of medicine is sometimes something that we need. And it's something that I think is sometimes easy to talk about. And then, like, as I'm sitting here recording where I know like anybody in the world can hear it, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I really admitting that? And then I think, why are we that way? Like, mental health is such a big thing in our society and in our world. I thought that what I was experiencing was normal. I really did. I thought that everybody was as stressed, spiraled, laid down at night and thought about all these things. I thought that this was just how it was supposed to be. Until it wasn't. I'm getting way more emotional than I expected. But my life changed when I got free from that. And without that help, I was never going to be able to get off the hamster wheel to do the other work. And I never had anybody to tell me this isn't normal until I was on the verge of like a teetotal breakdown. And so if anybody's never gone and talked to somebody, you should. Even if you don't think you have anything going on. I know that's why I said about reestablishing care this year, because I've kind of gotten off the wagon about going to therapy because things have been good. I've learned, I've used the skills I've learned. I've like learned to self-manage. But I always think that, like I said, there's such a good and special thing about having a place to talk through stuff that doesn't just always come up. But that may be a low grade rumble below the surface. Okay. So after all of that, another thing that was a big turning point for me back. I mean, sorry, non-runners, one more running thing, but it was my first half marathon. So there is something daunting about the thought of, am I really going to run 13 miles straight? And it is a huge feat. And it's not something that can be done overnight. And committing to actually running my first half marathon was what really pushed me to run the furthest I'd ever ran. So I think the furthest I'd ever ran before I started training for a half marathon was maybe 6 miles. And I mean, that is still a lot. But also that was like 6 miles, like once or twice maybe. When you're training for a half marathon, if you're training as you should, time on your feet is the key. It's running consistently. I know my uncle Michael John says you should be running every day if you like to run, if you're training, unless you're injured. And so it's really time on your feet. But through that, it is because half the issue with running a half marathon is not cardio. It is your body's endurance to get you there. So you don't just go from running the loop, running a 20-minute loop, to running for, 2.5 hours and enjoy it. And so it really taught me for the first time how much there could be joy in like easy distance running. Because at that point, remember, the time I'm running, it's a healthier habit now, because it's not just running to run as fast as I can to get it over with and be done. But it's not also Orange Theory either. It's not where I'm running for 30 minutes and I'm running an interval, or I'm running a HIIT, or I'm running hills. It's a mix of all of that, but then it's also mixed in of like, okay, a couple days you just go and you run 40 minutes easy, an hour easy. And then you start to work on trying to get faster. And for me, I've not ever tried to get faster because I'm still trying to master to be consistent with time on my feet and getting the distance down and getting the commitment down. It's not that I don't want to be faster, but what I really want, I'm still working on committing to the journey. But through that, Oh, it was an amazing experience. I was so proud of my body. And I think through training, started seeing my body as something so much more than just something I judged off of physical appearance, and I think there's a lot of times where you want to say you're either worried about the physical appearance or you're not worried about the physical appearance. But then there's this place when you're training for something. For me, probably being more of an athlete in a lot of ways in this season than I ever had before, that I need, like, my body was especially a tool. I mean, when I was a cheerleader and I tumbled, but not seriously. I did not love that like I love running. And so through that, I saw my body as something that was getting me places, was able to do this, was sustaining and enjoying it, and was strong. And it was a turning point, I think, in my perception of myself too. And I saw myself as this strong person, this somebody that could do something that a lot of people don't choose to do, and continue to commit to it day in and day out. And the endurance that it's given me, and I've been able to maintain even through seasons of not running as much, it's incredible. The last one of the last ones is just being able to reignite a passion around my career. I lost that when I moved back, didn't end up getting a job in agriculture, and I kind of had just mentally just accepted that maybe wasn't going to be in the cards for me. I felt very lost, and I wanted to have a career that I loved and that I was passionate about. And so when I got into mortgage, and I woke up every day excited to go to work, I loved what I did. I found purpose in it. I loved helping people. It was something that I enjoyed learning about. Like, it was such a blessing for all of that to click. And I know that that's such a privilege to be able to not to be have the opportunity to find that, but also, to be in a spot financially that I had the opportunity to take the risk of switching jobs, changing my career, doing something that trading in something I didn't enjoy for something I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy, because I had the ability to, say, okay, well, if this doesn't work out either, I can do something else. But to me, this is a big spot where I think there are a lot of people that just kind of float. And I know there's such a delicate balance here, because I think there's such a fine line, and back to the I can'ts and the reasonable things that may be barriers for somebody that live a different life than me, than you, than your cousin, than, whoever. But also, are we living with the how can I mindset? Because maybe for you, it's that you can't give up the stability that your job that you don't find fulfillment has. That it's not going to give you that. Maybe for you, it's not changing that, but maybe it's doing the thing that you've always had in your mind that you've long put away and it's collecting dust in your mind, and brushing that off and bringing it out and even just asking yourself, what would that look like if I wanted to make it happen? How do I make it happen? Not saying I'm going to, but how could I? How can I? Even that exercise. And then if you realize that it's making your creative wheels spin, and that's something that you're getting traction on, don't be afraid of failure. Don't not do it because you're unsure of the outcome. And at least, like I said, just give yourself the opportunity to explore that. And one of the biggest thing in my life, especially in the last 2 years, has just been my commitment and the devotion I have gotten to my faith. I've given to my faith, and I have recommitted my life to what I said it was based upon for so long, and in a better way than I ever have, and getting involved in a church that pushes me to that and helps me be surrounded by people that also are living for the same reasons. And the joy, the the growth I've seen, all truly all the fruits of the Spirit are living out in my life and in the people that I'm around. And it's something that I came to actually because when Chad decided that he was moving to Michigan, let me back up. He didn't just decide he was moving to Michigan. We made the we made the mutual choice that was his next step and what he needed to do. And we had been going to I go to Purpose Church in Murray, and we had been going to Purpose Church since 2019, sometime in 2019. And through the pandemic, we'd been watching online. We'd started going back a little bit in the middle school, which we used to have church in Cowley County Middle School. And it was around the time actually that Purpose signed the lease and got the building at where we're at now in Murray. And it kind of started hitting me, what am I going to do? What is my life going to look like when Chad is away? And I knew what I didn't want it to look like. And what I didn't want it to look like was me going back and doing some of the same old stuff that I did when I was in my younger 20s. I didn't want to find comfort in staying out late and going to party with friends. And I knew that it didn't align with who I was. It didn't align with the wife that I wanted to be. And I knew that I wouldn't want him going and doing that without me, especially. And I didn't want to do that to him. And I knew that it was going to be far easy for me to default to, okay, I'm lonely and this would be something I can fill my time with. And I knew God had definitely given me some discernment, wiser than I was with my own thoughts. I just knew it had just been placed on me, and I don't know where it came from. Like I said, that's why I credit it to God, but that I knew if I didn't do something else, I was going to slip into stuff and be doing stuff that I didn't want to be doing anymore. And so I knew, like, okay, this is my time. Like I'd been wanting to get involved with church for months and had this just crippling anxiety about making steps forward with it. And I just thought, I'm going to see this as a time that, like, obviously, like, I'm not in a single season of singleness, but I am in a way having something that's so comforting to me stripped away. And I know this is the time that, like, I can lean in to God and lean into what I've been saying I've wanted to do, that, inevitably this or that comes up and we haven't had time for, or whatever. And, when you're in a routine on a Sunday and this is just what you do and all that, it's like all that normalcy was gone anyways. And I just knew, like, this is my moment. And so I got involved and I haven't looked back. And that is one of those, like I said earlier, through chronological has this towards the end. But it really is the biggest piece of it all. It is, it's the zoom out. It is like all this stuff was accumulating, and then all of a sudden this glue came in and fused everything together and has made everything that I've done have so much more importance. There's been so much purpose that I've in clarity I've gotten, and it's not through anybody but Jesus, and it's not through anything other than digging more and more into the word and into my relationship with him. And I know that that's another reason why How You Get There is here too. And like I told Chad, all of these things, especially that one, trying to work through that, or if I would have started this podcast in 2020 when I first thought of it, it would have been probably awfully easy to let something like this especially be the Lord of my life, and let this get more and more of my free time, because it is something that I love. But because it wasn't in the picture until a huge building block, until a huge part of my life was already committed to the right things, to the right people, to giving my time and talents to the ultimate cause, the only cause. This doesn't get in the way of it, because I'm not having to make room for it. I'm just fitting it in. And so there's so much beauty in that and in that story. I hope that you've enjoyed this breakdown of some of the bigger things in my life, of my how you get there story. As I've asked other people's, like I said, it's been on my heart to find the right time to share mine, and I am doing it by myself. And so I'm not going to get anybody's feedback until I get yours. And so I would love to hear what you think. As always, I want to. But before we go, I've got a couple segments I'm going to run through just to keep us on brand with how you get there. So I'm going to do release or recommit by myself. So I am recommitting, ironically enough, to some of my rules that I've given myself. So that was a little bit of the story that I wanted to tell you earlier. Was I had told myself a while ago, like, I really need to be better about not trying to be on the phone when I leave the house. I feel like inevitably I leave something, I, feel rushed, or I run out of time, or like something that should take me 3 minutes to do takes me 10 minutes to do. And so then I'm late. And today I was actually on the phone, and I was talking with somebody, it was kind of work related, but it wasn't one of my clients. And so I was just really chitty chatting, some water cooler talk, and trying to get out the door. And then that's when I say, what do you know? I left like one of the most important things I needed to put in my car. And so I'm recommitting to the fact that I live better in black and white. And for me, this black and white is, I am just not going to be on the phone when I'm trying to get out of the house. I've got to do that. And I forget it in the moment. But even if I've got to be better too, and I know some people I think are good about this because they do it to me, as they should, but to say, okay, hey, I got to wrap up. I got to go, got to move on. And sometimes I feel like I can't do that because it's rude. And I think, no, nobody's like, I don't care when somebody does that to me. So recommitting, I'm going to go back to my rule. No phone when I'm trying to get out the door. Self-care tip of the week. Think about smart tech in your phone, in your home. I was so resistant to this, and the more I've thought about it, keypad door locks, they have changed my life. I locked myself out of our house one day, and I had to call the locksmith because Chad was like way off somewhere selling something, because I lost my key while I was running because I put it in my fanny pack and I guess it popped out. Since then, we've had a keypad door, and it is just so great to not have to carry keys. I love it so much. You can check to make sure you've locked your door from the app. And they're really, I feel like in the grand scheme of things, they're very cost effective. They're not a huge splurge. So if I had to pick one thing, I would say start with that, but also just like the power of, I don't have one of these, but I really want like a smart thermostat, because I go to sleep so cold, and then about in the middle of the night, we all get hot. But if it would just do the whole little fluctuating thing, I know that they're out there, and I know that they do that. And I think that's really, resisting it's not going to change that it's out there. So, embrace it. Well, that is it. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And instead of trying to go through my little spiel, I'm just going to let my outro play. See you next week. Thank you for joining me this week. I hope this episode met you where you were at, and it's given you your own clarity on steps forward for how you get there. Wherever and whatever that is, it is important, and your dreams matter. I would love to hear what you think of this episode and how you get there. You can connect with me personally via email at howyougеттhere@gmail.com, or you can find me at Rach Ross Denson on Instagram, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you love how you get there, I have a favor to ask. Will you share this episode with a friend and take a few seconds to follow, rate, and review How You Get There wherever you listen to your podcast? Please know you are playing a part in making my dream come to life, and for that, I am so grateful. Don't forget, if where you want to go in the future involves a home loan, I would love to help you. Find me on Instagram at Rachel Denson _MLO to learn all about mortgages from my videos, or use the link in the bio to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me. I hope to see you back here next week, where we'll keep talking all about how you get there.